Welcome to Clear and Candid, the official podcast of the Nueces County Sheriff's Office, where we pull back the curtain and bring you the real stories of the men and women who wear the uniform. In each episode, you'll meet deputies, correction officers, and even civilians, not just as professionals, but as people. Parents, veterans, athletes, neighbors, each with a story to tell. From adrenaline-fueled chases and tense moments inside the jail, to unexpected acts of kindness and the quiet strength it takes to serve. Clear and Candid shares the raw, honest, and sometimes wild experiences that shape our team and our community. This is more than a job, it's a calling. And these are the voices of Nueces County, up close and personal. So buckle up, stay sharp, and join us as we give a face to the badge and a heart to the uniform.
Hey everybody, I'm Lieutenant Gonzalez with the Nueces County Sheriff's Office. How is everyone doing today? We have a very, very special guest today. We have Deputy Chief Daniel Perez, who's been here for 36 years.
It's amazing.
It's a long time.
That is a long time.
Also with us today, our co-host Natalie Williams.
Hi everybody.
So, Chief, we want you to kind of take us a little bit back in time. The 36 years, I'm sure often when you have conversations, and I know that time has kind of came and gone faster than the 36 years, which is, I know, a gigantic time here. Yeah. Can you take us back to the beginning when you first got hired?
Sure. I like to say that I've come full circle in my career today, and in the office that I now occupy is the same office that I was hired in from Major Maria Sears, and that's where I interviewed, and that's where I did a lot of questions and answers, and that's the same office that I occupy now. So it's come full circle.
Full circle.
But in the 36 years, I started out as a correctional officer. Excuse me, and I worked the floors, and I know, kind of going through some numbers, we were lucky back then if we had about 8 to 10 people per shift. And the briefing room is where the laundry is currently now, and not much bigger than where we're at today. So we have a very small headed desk, several seats around the corner. And that was it. And you were lucky if you got to sit down, and not you were standing up.
And to put it in perspective, 8 to 10, how many are on shift now?
Oh, now there's probably double that or triple that. 8 to 10 people just at the main jail has transitioned to about 20 something just at the main jail, and about another 14 at the annex. And so back at the annex, back then, we were lucky if we had maybe 6 people or so. And so it's really, really multiplied as our jail has grown and our population as far as inmates has grown. It's funny. Somebody was asking for a bench the other day. I said, I've seen a bench somewhere, and it's in front of the old elevators on the second floor landing. And on the weekends, that was holding cell 2 for the females, because they were lucky if they just had just enough to put in a holding cell. But if we got overflowed as far as intake, they put the females out there on the bench in the hallway.
In the hallway.
Right outside the room. So we called it holding cell 2. And so it was just a lot different back then. The female population now, I think Monday we had about 170 or so.
160, 170 your average, yeah. So,
they went from holding a small space, a holding cell, to now they have a whole entire floor, basically. Yes. The whole 6 to 7 floor, technically. Yeah. The female population has definitely exploded, I guess, over the last couple of years. So, Chief, tell us a little bit more. So, can you recall who was the first sheriff that? So, you remember Major? You said Major
Sears.
Major Sears, yeah. Yes. And then, so who was the sheriff at the time that you became, that you got hired on?
James Hickey. James Hickey was the sheriff. And back then, it was like correctional officer. We were lucky if you got to meet him, and I maybe met him once or twice in my career while he was here. As I rose in the ranks, and of course, your interaction with the sheriffs becomes a little bit more and more. back then, it's kind of like, they were the man. Unless you were in trouble,
Right.
That's what I tell people. You don't want to wind up in the principal's office. And that's what I equated to.
And so after him, who was the next sheriff that you served for?
J.P. Luby.
Okay, and so, how was that interaction?
He was a little bit different. He took a lot more interest in the jail. And he came into the jail a lot more. And so, while he was in office, was around the same time period that Yolanda Saldivar, the convicted murderer of Selena Quintanilla, she was in jail. And,
high profile.
Yeah. So he took the opportunity to get the I guess political, not political, but the publicity of walking Yolanda Saldivar out of the car or into jail. And so it was just a photo op. And, so can't blame him, but that's.
You wanted to be part of the purple walk?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit different.
Yeah.
So, typically, a sheriff doesn't do that kind of
right.
job.
Hands on. Yeah.
So. And after J.P. Luby, Larry Olivares came into office. After that, he resigned to run for office. Rebecca Stutz was still in. She was appointed by the Commissioner's Court for less than a year. After that, of course, Jim Kalen was elected. When Jim Kalen left, Sheriff Hooper was appointed. Where we're at today.
So how many sheriffs is that? That's 2, 3,
six.
4, 5, 6.
Six.
So 6 different sheriffs that you've been. And I would assume, Chief, that over that 36 years, 6 sheriffs. Tell us a little bit about going through the ranks. You're a CO. Then tell us a little bit about getting promoted to sergeant.
Well, I like to tell people that being a sergeant was the most interesting time that I've had, because you have responsibilities, but you still want to be part of the guys, the guys that you work with. But I like to refer to it as I became a sergeant and a supervisor, you kind of have to start leaving some of the things that you used to do behind. And of course, when you make lieutenant, that you have to separate even more. And so you still want to be part of the guys, part of the crowd, but you have to start separating yourself, because if you don't make that separation, when you have to assign somebody somewhere or tell them to do something, it gets harder. They say, "Hey, come on, man, we're buddies." And it's fun. And so I told the guys back then that I supervised, I said, "Hey, we can go out to lunch, and then we can, go do things." And we used to go fishing after and golfing after a shift. And that was all fun, But there needed to be that separation. I said, we can hang out and we can do this, and socialize, but when it comes to work, there needs to be that separation. So I always tried to make that understood. We could be friends, but nothing more than that. And so it was for me, it was fairly easy.
So you had a good, easy time. I guess we can say about like building morale and a team build, right? Because that's like golfing. Everybody likes to do that. But they're just there golfing, and you're kind of having a good time and taking your mind off of things, but you're still building a good team. So.
And it may not look like it, but I used to play basketball with the guys. And so we used to have a lot of fun, and that was just part of
camaraderie. Yeah,
it was a lot of fun back then.
Yeah.
Is that when y'all used to play at the juvenile center?
Well, we played at juvenile, and then we also used to play at Ben Garza.
Okay.
And so that was always a lot of fun.
Before you promoted, what was your favorite part of being a corrections officer?
It was probably interacting with the inmates. I joke around that I could have had my 10-year reunion on the 5th floor, because there was a lot of guys that I went to high school with. Not a lot,
No.
And it was funny, because when you would see them, hey,
Right.
and then what are you doing here? And so kind of go through what happened. Some of them always it's like, well, this happened, and it was never their fault, and so. But luckily, I don't see a lot of people like that
Yeah.
And it's good. It's good. But then some of the people that you get to meet, and then the personalities, and so it's just very interesting to interact with the inmates and stuff. It's a learning experience and how to deal with people. Some good and some bad, but you learn. You learn.
Right.
So
And Chief, I hate to ask, but so you went? What high school did you go to?
I went to Moody. I graduated in 1981, and so I'd like to think now in reflecting back on my high school career and then career as after I graduated, all the influences that I have because I get to do a lot of things now, and one of them is teaching or instructing teachers. They call it an externship, where they work for the workforce solutions. And they get to come in and they get to tour a lot of industries, and one of them is the jail. And they get to go to Valero, and they get to go to the county courthouse. And one of the stops that they do for a day is with us there at the sheriff's office. And I get to interact with a lot of teachers, and they ask a lot of very, very good questions. And they asked me one year, how were you when you were in school? And I was like, well, and so
We don't need to talk about
We're gonna
that.
talk about that.
I'm going to hold you to it. And I said, well, it's interesting because I always thought myself as an average student, and I always used to joke with myself that I graduated in the top third of my class because there was 300, a little over 300 in our class, and I graduated 101.
Nice.
And so I said top third of my
yeah,
class.
heck yeah.
But then, several years ago, my wife and I were applying for a franchise, and what could it hurt? And they needed our high school transcripts. And then when I got mine, I'm like, man, I'm lucky I even graduated. But looking back then, I wish I would have applied myself, a lot more, to doing, my education and maybe paying attention a lot more instead of just kind of blowing off some things, barely skating by. But I think everything else that I've learned in between is probably to where I'm at today.
And did you jump right from high school to corrections, or
No.
did you have?
Yeah, that's another thing. I needed a job. I was out of high school and I wanted a job, and I applied for. It was a courier for Channel 10, and a lot of people may or may not know that Channel 10, their main offices or management offices were downtown in the 800 building, and then or the Wilson building, and their studios were right outside of Robstown, and so they had to shuttle stuff back and forth. And so that's what I applied for, and I didn't get it, but there was another opening for what they called a videotape operator. So they were a little antiquated, and so everything that they ran was on these big old VCR tape machines.
For those that don't know, a VCR is like a DVD player, which is also what we had before streaming.
Yeah.
Just gotta clarify for
So, it was 2-inch tape, and you'd load it on a big old, reel to reel kind of thing. And that's what I did. And I worked in the control room, and then I graduated from there to being a control room operator, and that was just running the commercials and pushing buttons. And when you go to a commercial, you push this button, and you play this machine, and then when all the commercials are over, you go back to either network, programming. And so that's what I did for 2.5 years.
Lieutenant, we should have had him
Yeah,
producing our podcast for us the whole time
Producing.
instead of having to try to do two things at once.
And so from there, I went to Channel 6, and I stayed there 5 years. And so, and then it came down to money. And then, of course, if you're familiar with the environment around here, a lot of oil industry going on and advertising. And when the market started going down, people stopped advertising. And then so it affects the whole market. And so I was stuck at, just above minimum wage. I've just recently been married and trying to provide for my family, and I decided to leave. And that's what a friend of mine who still works for county, and he worked for the sheriff's office, and the bailiff now. He kind of, recruited me, and like we say now that everybody's a recruiter.
Yep,
And so I applied, and then I got hired, and 36 years later, here I am.
Look at you now.
Yep.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yep.
So besides the manpower, what's the biggest difference from when you started as a correction officer 36 years ago to now, as far as the jail
Yeah,
goes?
it's a lot of the technology, and then just we call them key checks. And you had to do so many key checks, an hour, and you actually had a key, and you would go to a point in the jail and turn the key, and it would register on this printout that you did your key check. And then from there, they evolved to some push buttons, and then eventually they evolved to what they call the pipe, where there's a electronic button on the wall, and it looks like a flashlight. And of course, they go around and push this electronic reading device to these buttons to show that they were in a certain area in the jail. So that's evolved. And then I was thinking also that back in the day, we didn't have computers.
Right.
We had a dumb terminal, which was part of a local area network, and it connected to the mainframe at the third floor of the courthouse. And that's how we operated, doing stuff. But it was just mainly tracking people and then changing their units. And if you were smart enough and knew how to run reports, you could run reports on it. But we didn't have any type of devices where we could write a report now. They do have now, and a lot of the technology has really changed. So making the job a lot easier. And as the workforce has changed, they know more about computers than people in my generation.
Right.
So, and for those of you that don't know, to connect to the internet, you had to have a dial-up modem connected to a phone line, and so it was just like very funny. And so that's how we did it, and we were lucky if we did have that created other problems.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I could see how the technology would change things drastically.
Yeah. And then of course, just the population, the jail, the facility grew. You had, more units. And, this thing out of California called direct supervision, where an officer was actually placed inside a unit to supervise inmates. And then jail standards dictated that you had one officer for every 48 inmates, minimum. Sometimes it could be there could be a variance, and it could be up to 72, but there had to be at least a rover between the areas to supplement that officer. So it seems daunting that you're in there with 48 inmates, and then of course the demographic of the prisoners that you were supervising changes a whole lot. And so back then they used to call it potty train. and you had to have a class, and it was in interpersonal communications, so that way, in case you did get into trouble, you could talk your way through.
De-escalation
problem.
for sure.
And so, I remember the first time I was sent out to the annex to work, and the officer that I relieved, he says, "Don't let them know that you're afraid." And I said, "I'm not afraid." I said, "I've just never worked out here. I don't know what to do." So at the annex, it's a lot different. They had trustees all over the annex, as opposed to the way they have it now. They're all centralized now. And so around lunchtime, this guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, you're supposed to send me out to the kitchen." And I was like, "You're crazy! I'm not going to open the door and let you out." And so I had to call somebody, and they laughed and they said, "Oh yeah, what's his name?" And I forgot the guy's name. So yeah, he's a trusty. Pat him down, write him out, and then call for the door to
send him on his way. Wow.
Because now you're not gonna eat. You're not gonna get no drinks.
You don't get your
You're not gonna get your food.
And so it just it seemed foreign to me that he just opened the door and this guy was walk out in the hallway. So but the annex is a lot different than of course the main jail.
Right.
They do get to go and walk the halls unsupervised. There's cameras everywhere, so they're being monitored, but they don't walk with an officer. Main jail, they don't go anywhere.
Anywhere,
So,
right.
unsupervised. That was a new concept to me. So
Mhm.
it just kind
And Chief, more or less, what year did you start working at the sheriff's office?
1989.
And that was before they built the new part of the jail for sale, or was that already going on when you started?
They were just starting it where the walkway is between the old jail and the new jail. There used to be a unit there. It was called 4L, and it was rated for 16 inmates. And it was like a pre-classification unit. And every weekend, the shift would try to break a record to see how many people we could stuff in there. Because we couldn't hold them downstairs for so long, so we had to move them up and then we would put them in there. And sometimes it was like 32 people in there, rated
Oh,
for
wow.
16.
Yeah.
And when you would open the door, I mean, they were laying right there. It's like tennis like me, fall out. And so that was always very interesting. Like a competition between the shifts to see how many we could stuff in there. But of course, you can't do that.
Jail
anymore.
standards
Yeah,
would not
jail
allow
standards.
that.
Probably shouldn't. Can we edit that out?
We're live here. We're live.
It's past the statute.
Back in the day,
It's
guys.
past the statute of limitations. It's past the statute of limitations. But that just goes to show like the need back
Right.
then
Right.
in '89
Right.
for the expansion of 1P is 2P.
Right.
The new medical floor, because back then they didn't have that medical wing that we have now. 4P, 4R, 6P, 6R, right?
Right.
So all that wasn't even built when you started working here. So basically, half of the sheriff's office, when you look at the building itself, it's in essence double in size.
Right.
And so you were here for that. I guess that transition going from what was old to brand new technology. And like you said, it went from indirect supervision to direct supervision.
Because the capacity for the jail for the just the main jail was a little over 200. And now the capacity is way. I have it on my phone because I always get asked that every now and then.
12 or
It's
1149.
it's 1168 now.
1168.
So, total.
Not including the holding cell.
Yeah,
Right.
So it's that in itself is and then
And it's still not enough.
it's still not
We need
enough.
more.
Still
Yeah.
not enough. Still not
You hear
enough.
that? We do need a new jail.
New jail for sure.
Which takes me, actually, we had a question come through from Mr. Johnny Brown. How do you see the future of the jail developing over the next 5 years? Hopefully, start on a new jail, but.
We had a study done. The sheriff, authorized a study for the need to show that it's there.
Right.
And so, even though our population right now is, historically low for this time of the year, can't to really say why, but it's there. Because not even a year ago, we were teetering at 97, 98%. And,
For months and months,
And
yes.
so it shows the need, and of course, the funding.
Right.
Where is that funding going to come from? Sad to say that the taxpayers are going to have to bear the burden of that. But, in the past, when we've proposed it, taxpayers don't want to fund a jail. they believe that it's not everybody, but some people believe that jail is a place to be punished, and not necessarily. So.
And not only that, but should our employees be punished also? And a new jail will help them greatly do their jobs better.
Yes. So, better facilities and better security measures. It enhances the security for not only for the inmates but for the officers and staff as well. And I know when we were kicking around numbers, suggestions, how much bed space do we need? And the number was about 3,000, so that ensures future growth.
Right.
That we're not in the same place 2 years from now, 5 years from now. Even though we're not going to fill all those 3,000, that potentially we could, we can grow into that.
Instead of having to last minute
that's
expand.
right.
Mhm. For sure.
You want to build a jail that's going to last you for at least another 30, 40 years
Right.
and just,
Yes.
absorb the cost one time versus again a few years down the road. Chief, there's a few people that said here the best boss ever. And one of our former employees, Rocky Benavides, he says, I second that. He's the best boss ever. So shout out to Rocky. He's over there at CCISD. And he's one of the current cadets at the Del Mar Academy. But yeah, so it's been kind of a journey, right, to see the expansion of the sheriff's office double, and I mean from 200 to 1100, almost 1200.
Right.
I mean it's grown exponentially, and we still need more space.
Still need more.
You know, and then really to go from, you know, like you said, 8 officers in a shift, and now you really need 40 officers to run a shift. I mean, it's crazy how the sheriff's office has just, you know, evolved. What about like camera technology?
Back in the day, there was very, very minimal cameras for observation, and they didn't record. But as technology evolved and the cost became a little bit more, reasonable, they started recording on VHS tape.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it was funny because it was on a regular, maybe 6 or 8 hour video or cartridge. It would run on time lapse, and so they could get 24 hours on a VHS tape. And, in the control room, they would switch them out every 12 hours. And they would store them for so long and make sure that they weren't needed, and then they would recycle them. And so, I mean, that was back in the day, and then we got rid of that system. We went to server technology, and it was local there. But then we've run into problems with that, and then now we eventually transitioned to cloud storage, where we're not even recording here locally; we're recording offsite.
There's not enough space, and you have to worry about electricity issues and all of that. Yeah.
But technology, and we went from 50 or 60 cameras at the main jail to close to 200, or over 200.
Oh, I think over 200 now.
Yeah, so it's changed. You really can't hide what you're doing anymore. That not that we should be, but
right.
Gonna have to just, be aware of where those cameras are at. Try to maintain your visibility, and then also they've introduced the body cameras into the jail. And usually that was just a technology for outside, patrol and CID and warrants, and now they've introduced those body cameras into the jail.
And I would think that helps more than hurts our officers, because we have so many false allegations that can be disproved by those cameras. Yeah.
And Chief, you at one point you were the assistant chief deputy for field operations for a while. So you've also been able to see the technology improvements, not just inside the jail, but also like in CID, in patrol, and warrants. Like you said, like even just like the technology. And then I know that you also do a lot of the documentation requests and video requests. So you've kind of been able to see some of the. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of those technology improvements that you've kind of witnessed over time?
Yeah, because before it was easier because our retention period for a lot of these things was we couldn't retain a lot of these records, and then they would corrupt. VHS was only viable for so long. As technology advanced, started using a lot of electronic services to retain these recordings, and so it made my job a little bit more difficult. But like Natalie was saying, that it helps us prove sometimes that what suspect said happened. We can disprove it very easily because of the recording.
Right.
And so have the proof to say that happened, and then also just accidents or mistakes that that officers do, and that like, okay, well, what happened to in the situation, and then we can just go back to the recording and say, okay, well, this is what happened, so we can piece and timeline what happened actually, and so we can prove or disprove evidence, or just what occurred. So it makes it a lot easier.
More accountability both ways.
And then not only that, but then we can use that as a training tool, because we can show, hey, look, this is why we tell you to do something a certain way, because look at this video, and this is something that can happen. And we do that even now in the jail school, and even like patrol will kind of go back and, not saying Monday night quarterback something, but at least be able to learn from things. Hey, you know what, this is what it is, and let's look at it together and
use it as a learning experience.
Use it as a learning experience and a learning tool. And,
right.
I'm glad that we can use the technology for that purpose. It's not just like we got you, but it's also as a learning tool.
We call them training opportunities, and not to point out, and then embarrass somebody, but to show people what not to do and and how not to handle the situation. It's a good training opportunity to show what not to do or how not to handle the situation.
Because if somebody's handling it that way, there's more than likely there's other people that think that's how it should be handled as well.
Right.
And on that same token, sometimes there's a situation that happened and somebody handled the situation very well, and then boom, we can show, look, this is how this situation went down, and we did everything correct.
Right.
And so and that happens a lot of the time. 99% of the time, that's we're doing things. People don't recognize that we're always doing the right thing. They only look sometimes at what we do wrong. But those things are awesome tools to have. So, Chief, tell us a little bit, almost in closing, recruitment. How do you feel like we've done here recently? That you kind of spearheaded something about a year and a half ago that you wanted to get to 0 vacancies. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that wasn't my brainchild. That was the previous recruiter, or not recruiter, but the previous training captain, who's now the jail administrator. He spearheaded that program because I remember the sheriff asked me when we got down to almost 0 vacancies, or 0 vacancies for a short time. He says, "How did this happen?" And I couldn't believe that we were down to 0 vacancies from 30 or 40, just a few months before. It's interesting on how we've had to handle an applicant, and it's hate to say that it's the next generation, but it's just the handwriting an application and filling out a personal history statement. It's not on the phone. They actually have to write. And then I remember Chief Rivetta talking about an applicant, and he was kind of walking him through the application. And the question was, have you ever, been pulled over or detained by the police? And so he's asking him. He says, no. Okay, he says, no.
Yeah, kind of have to walk
them through it.
But it's interesting, that sometimes, it depends on what kind of upbringing that they've had and their interaction with filling out an application. And we've had parents come up here and wanting to find out, why didn't my son get hired? And I'm thinking I'm dealing with an 18-year-old's mother, and then come to find out that this guy's 34 years old. And so I'm thinking, okay, well,
sometimes moms can overstep a little.
And so I make this perception in my mind. It's like, does this son really need the help, or is it the mom thinking, I need to get this boy
out of my house,
further to launch? And so you kind of have to think about it. So, but it's really interesting on all the applicants and that we see. And so I know we had talked about a writing exercise that we used to do, and that was a good gauge on how they communicate, how they read, and so it helps us gauge on are they going to be somebody that's going to be I guess have some difficulties in the jail school,
right?
And so as far as
or report writing, for sure.
And so it's very interesting. So one of the things that I get to do every week, almost every week now for a while, is I get to administer the oath of office for new hires, new correctional officers. And that's one of the things that I get to observe is as they're reading, how they read. And it's not really reading, it's just repeating after me.
Right.
And then their difficulty, and then just reading, pronouncing words. It kind of gives me a gauge of where they're at. Maybe not education, but their reading level.
Right.
And so it's not saying that they're going to be very difficult to handle in the jail school, where they're going to need a lot of tutoring. It's just kind of thinking, okay, well, this person may need a little bit more work, and the academy has pulled out those people and assigned them to groups
Right.
and tutor them and get them through, because it's beneficial to us to try to invest that much time and effort to getting these people past this.
Sure.
So, Chief, one last question.
Oh, you got it?
One last
Okay.
question. So, as the chief deputy, are there still any goals or projects that you'd like to accomplish here in the near future?
I know that one of the goals that we've been working towards, and it seems small, and we probably just need to invest more time into researching on. We have a warehouse full of records. It takes our records or our personnel clerk manual. It takes him a few minutes to unstaple everything and then scan it and put it in a folder, electronic folder. But when we're talking about boxes, and then we hire somebody today and then they quit, and then that leaves a paper record, and we have about 10 file cabinets. They're not full, and they've been slowly going through and trying to scan all these folders. And so I know that our office manager, she wants to go paperless. I mean, it's been difficult to try to manage paperless versus what we need versus what TICO requires,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a delicate balance on how we can manage that. So I guess maybe me, because I'm old school, paper. I've read electronic books, and then I've read paperbacks, and then it's just nothing like holding a book and turning the page. And so, but in also the convenience, we recently had to go pull a personnel file from 1995, and luckily, Jeremy, our recruiter, he has inventoried most of the boxes over there. And I said, okay, I need this employee's personnel file. And he says, hold on. He looked and he goes, it's going to be in box
Oh, wow.
L1 or whatever.
Yeah.
3,499.
Well, that's the other issue you get with paper is
Yes.
all of the storage space it requires.
Right.
It's
Yes.
insane how.
Yep. But we've made some strides, and the manual's been scanning a lot, and we've earmarked a whole bunch of boxes to be transported to the warehouse and to be retained just for a certain amount of period. And then it's very difficult, because I've asked our records management officer what is required for us to maintain. And if you look at the it's called TSLAC. It's the Texas State Library of Archives. So we're required to maintain some records for 75 years, some for 75 plus after they leave, and then there's some records in our personnel file that are only required to be maintained 5 years after they leave.
Right.
And so it's just so big. It's just we decided, just keep the whole file for 75 plus years.
That's a long time.
So end the time.
Yep.
Oh man.
Well,
But then I've also found out that if we have it, we have to produce it.
Right.
And so I'm thinking if we delete a lot of this stuff or just destroy it,
You don't have to worry about all the
It's
paperwork.
past the
Yeah.
retention,
So
Right.
retention
it's a
window.
balancing act.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Chief, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Yes.
We want to remind everybody, Natalie is working on our Safe Summer Kickoff.
Safe Summer Kickoff will be May 30th at the Richard and Borchard Fairgrounds. If you have a business or something that has summer camps or programs for kids, we want you to promote that there. It's free to have a vendor table. You can just reach out to our Facebook page. You can find my email on our Facebook as well. And just shoot me a message and let me know you want to be there. As far as the rest of the community, come out. It'll be free food, free giveaways, and we'll have water balloon fights with the deputies at the end too. So that's always
It's
fun.
going to be tons of fun. There is a lot of people last year, and we're really looking forward to that. So we want to start kind of promoting it early
It's our second annual, so.
And like Natalie said, if you have a business or something, you want to go out there, come on out there. Obviously, you can't charge because everything is free. But yeah, shoot us a message on Facebook, and we will answer you promptly. And then as far as who's going to be the next guest, stay tuned.
It's a surprise.
It will be a surprise to us, and just as much as that person, they might know a day or two, as you can Chief Perez
I give him 3 day notice, right? Yeah.
3 days. Chief can definitely attest to that. But all right, well, on that note, guys, thank you for tuning in.
Thanks, Chief. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
You guys have a great rest of your week, and we will see you soon.